had this dream that I was in my basement and I was worshiping God. God was standing in the corner of my basement and I was worshiping him. And he stopped me and then he said, soon your faith is going to be tested. And I didn't really know what that meant, but the creator of the universe is standing in my basement. I'm going to keep worshiping him. So I kept worshiping him, and then I had a knock at my door. So I went to go and answer it, and there was a shadow of a man standing there who was dying of hunger. He said, I am hungry. Give me something to eat, and I will give you all the power you could ever want. And I said, I don't want your power, but come in, eat whatever you want. He came in, he ate all my food, and I became hungry. So I went back to worship God. And then there was another knock at my door. So I went to go and answer it, and there was a shadow of a man standing there who was dying of thirst. He said, I am thirsty. Give me something to drink, and I'll give you all the knowledge you could ever want. But so he came in, and he drank all the fluid that we had in our house, drank the wells empty, and then crushed the faucets. So I had nothing to drink, and I became thirsty. And then then I went to worship God some more. Then there was another shadow that knocked at my door. So I went to answer it, and there was a shadow of a man standing there who was tired. And he just looked like he was on the brink of collapse. And he said, I am tired. Give me a place to rest, and I will give you immunity to any disease. And I said, I don't want your immunity, but come in, and you can rest wherever you want. So he came in, but everywhere that I turned, he was sleeping, or when he was awake, he and the other two were so loud and obnoxious, I couldn't catch any sleep. So, so I became tired. Then I went back into my basement to worship God some more. And then God said, I'm going to leave you with this, but don't worry, I'm not gone. So he left, and then there was another knock at my door, and I went to answer it. There's a shadow of a man standing there who was out of breath. And he said, just let me in so I can catch my breath, but I can already feel him pulling the air out of my lungs. So I said, no, you can catch your breath on the street. And I slammed the door in his face. And I went back down to find the other three shadows had put up a statue of a man with his arms up and forward, and they were bowing to it and worshiping it. So I ran up and I pushed it over, and I said, don't worship false idols in my basement. And they said, who do you think you are? We eat your food and we drink your water and we sleep in your bed. You have no authority over us. Then they attacked me. The one that promised me the one that promised me knowledge had his hands on my head and was telling me lies both in a loud, audible voice and in whispers. Lies like, God doesn't love you, he hates you, why do you think he left? He just didn't want to see you die, you're just a sacrifice and that's it. The one that promised me power was sitting on my chest, and he had his hands, he was gripping my wrists, and he would hit me. Where he hit me was here, 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 and once hard here. Okay, so under the nose, under the lip, in the nose, under the left eye, and then once hard in the stomach. And the one that promised me immunity to disease had his hands on my knees and was making me sick, but from the knees first. I got my hands together and I prayed, God, where are you? And the powerful one pulled my hands apart and just started hitting me, and it hurt so badly every time it left a well. And on one of his wind-ups, I kicked him in the shoulder as hard as I can. And I'm very good at kicking, and blew out his shoulder. It was like kicking a burnt tree trunk. Ash flew off the back and everything, and dislocated his shoulder. But then he just clicked it back in and it kept coming at me. But that gave me time to get my hands together. I folded my hands and I closed my eyes. And then God was standing in front of me. And he said, how dare you think I would leave you with this? Don't you know the heavenly shepherd never takes his eye off his flock? And then everything went blank for a bit. And all the whispers and everything, the voices that were so clear before, made no sense to me. They were just gibberish. So I grabbed the hands on the side of my head and I said to the demon, your deceit doesn't affect me. My faith is too strong. And then he turned to smoke. And then my arms burst into a blue flame, which burnt the powerful one. He stood up, screamed, and was burned to ashes. And then I kicked the diseased one off my legs. It was at this point that he gained the deceit of the first demon to perish. And I was fully engulfed in this blue flame at this point, and he was telling me lies, as well as making me sick, and he didn't need to be touching me to do this. He became so powerful that he just needed to be there. And he was saying, why are you still fighting? You're just a walking corpse. Look at you. You're falling apart in front of me. Do you really think your God can help you here? And I said, do you really think Lucifer can help you here, Gemini? I didn't know what Gemini meant in the dream, but I knew that was his name. And he asked me, how do you know my name? And I said, the heavenly shepherd knows every wolf that will attack his flock by name. He became so afraid that he turned to stone, and then he crumpled. And I turned around, God was standing there, and he said, well done, good and faithful servant. With you I'm well pleased. You have passed the test. Then I woke up. And what ended up happening was that day I walked into my bathroom and spit into the toilet, and there was blood in my spit. And then I took off my shirt, and down my arms and down my chest was just a bunch of trickles of blood. I didn't realize it, but I do 1,000 push-ups every week, and I'd been sweating blood from the day previous of doing them. So I went to the hospital, and it was discovered that I had 1 platelet left. You're supposed to have 150 at the lowest. I had 1 left. So my blood was literally becoming as thin as water. And I started to have little tiny issues, such as I had a little bump here and a little bump here. A couple days later, these 2 little bumps swelled up to be about this big, and to the end of my nose. This one swelled up to be about that big, and out to here. My nose bled for 8 hours straight, so we had to have it packed. And with the packing, it burst a blood vessel in here, and my eye swelled up. And a couple days later, my platelets reached 0, and I had a GI bleed. All places where the powerful demon hit me. And the the medication that we used to counter this, or to try and go against this, was prednisone, which is a steroid. Usually the catch with a steroid is that it makes you stronger. All this did was it raised my metabolism, and I became hungry. And so that was the powerful demon. The second one was, we tried a chemotherapy, and the chemotherapy, we knew it was going to work. We had all the faith that you could ever have in it. However, it didn't work. It just deceived us, and it made me thirsty. It dehydrated me. And the the last one was, we tried another chemo treatment that was supposed to expand my bone marrow from the inside. And it did this in the hopes that it would produce more blood properties. But what happened was it expanded my bone marrow so much that it started to put pressure on the walls of my bones, and my bones were about to split. And where that happened first was in my knees, which is where the deceitful one had his hands. And in my opinion, and the last shadow was, we tried another one to boost my platelets. And what that one did was, it was an inhaled treatment called pentamidine. Something you just go into a room and you breathe it in, and it's supposed to give you more platelets somehow. But what happened was, it seized up my lungs, and I couldn't breathe in or out. So I had to have I had to get another medication put into me, and we never went back to that medication again, which would have been me slamming the door in the final demon's face. And in my opinion, the demons had dual meanings. The first one would have been the first issue, which was bleeding, my internal bleeding. The second issue would have been the blood clots in my lungs that followed. And the third one was At one point, when I had my blood clots in my lungs, I didn't take my heartburn medication because I didn't think it was important. But what happened was the stomach acid splashed up into my throat and burnt through the scar tissue, and I was bleeding at the same time as bleeding internally at the same time as having my blood clots, which was the two problems in one at the end of the dream. It was at this point that I looked up Gemini, and Gemini means for two to become one or twins. And just want to let you know that no matter how hard things get, why should I lose faith if God said, "Well done, good and faithful servant," at the end of the dream?